WHO recommends rescheduling cannabis in international law for first time in history.
Here's a summary of the article.
This marks a significant change in WHO's position, which for the last 60 years has said that cannabis should not be used in medicine, according to an article in the BMJ. The WHO Expert Committee on Drug Dependence has recommended that cannabis resin and other marijuana products should be downgraded from a Schedule IV to a Schedule I drug under international law. The very positive outcome clearly acknowledges medical applications of cannabis and cannabinoids, reintegrates them into pharmacopoeias, balances harms and repeals the WHO position from 1954, according to which there should be efforts towards the abolition of cannabis from all legitimate medical practice. A statement from the organization read, "The expert committee makes decisions on the scheduling of substances based on their potential for harm, dependence and misuse, as well as their medical benefits." Ethan Russo of the International Cannabis and Cannabinoids Institute told Newsweek that the WHO's latest proposals were very significant given the organization's historical stance on cannabis. International drug policy expert Martin Jelsma from the Transnational Institute said this was the first time in history that the WHO had undertaken a proper critical review of cannabis and related substances. The problem is that after the inclusion of cannabis in 1961, it became itself one of the standards for further scheduling decisions for Schedule I, he told Newsweek. The first test the WHO must do in its review process is whether a substance has addiction-producing properties greater than those of codeine and more or less comparable to those of morphine, or has a liability to abuse comparable to that of cannabis, cannabis resin or cocaine. Now one of the standards itself for the review process is being reviewed. That basic test needs to be done first with regard to similarity with the other standards, e.g., morphine or cocaine. The committee fails to do that, which makes the recommendation to keep cannabis and resin in Schedule I very questionable on procedural grounds.
This post received a score of 85,096, with an upvote ratio of 88%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Greater than the WHO Expert Committee on Drug Dependence has recommended that cannabis resin and other marijuana products should be downgraded from a Schedule IV to a Schedule I drug under international law. Schedule IV is the strictest category outlined in the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs Treaty, meaning that cannabis is currently treated in the same way as heroin, severely restricting scientists who want to investigate the plant in the search for potential therapies. The committee also recommended that THC, the main psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, should be designated as a Schedule I drug to simplify its classification. Currently, THC is classified separately as a Schedule IV drug under the 1971 Convention on Narcotic Drugs.
The main question I have is, how often do countries listen to WHO's recommendations?
Depends on how much the country cares, listens to its public health ministry. I'm sure it'll have more impact in, say, any European country, than in the US. Edit. US was bad example, as there are several 2020 candidates, all Dem, third party, seeing as how Trump lied about his support, who are likely pro-legalization in more and more states. Nonetheless, impact will vary by country.
Dude, Sweden here. Hell is gonna freeze over before we legalize. Insane amount of taboo around weed here. Parents and politicians would rather have us pump ourselves full of booze or befriend an organized criminal to get a hold of weed.
Yay, we will probably be the last developed country in the world who legalizes.
That is nuts. I had no idea that Sweden of all places had the head in ass problem regarding cannabis.
It's interesting really, we're generally a very progressive country. Weed really is the devil's lettuce here though.
Have you tried turning the country off and then on again?
They tried that twice in the US, but it stayed broken each time.
Maybe the reason is that you guys always swap out the processor for a better one, and as soon as it starts to run better you put a defective one back in.
This is confusing every time because in America Schedule I is the worst.
What's popular with the black folks these days? I think is how the US schedules these things.
Greater than we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. John Ehrlichman, Nixon's former domestic policy advisor.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.